say, this side of you, since from 2 years ago when we got involved in this? So, because you're so, yeah, you really done the hard. Okay.
Because it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Doesn't that make you want to go out?
Yeah, I have to leave now, I have to make some phone calls.
Thank you very much, Bill. May I have a little bit?
Oh, thank you.
I don't have much.
That's okay.
I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Deb Kole from the Concerned Women of America, and she's going to talk very briefly about their application for Champion of the World. Deborah?
Thank you, Frida. Can y'all hear me out there? Am I speaking loud enough? Yeah?
Might want to raise that, Frida.
Is that okay?
You're fine.
Am I fine? I am with Concerned Women for America. I don't know if you're familiar with us, but I do have some brochures that we can pass out after I'm done. And I try to pass out some of the cards. This is our little She Votes logo. If y'all are computer savvy, you go to shevotes2012.org. That website is on your card. You will find the same kind of tools that Dale's talked about, looking at voter guides and that sort of thing. Basically, I think we're all using the same tools to get people registered, to get them out to vote, to raise awareness of what's going on. And I'd like to, did you and I talk before? No. I've seen you on videos, but we've never talked. And so I'm just here to tell you that God is doing some powerful things in our country. And the things that you mentioned have been going through my mind today. And you talked about after the ball. If y'all want to really read what is going on in the agenda, and again, I am not bashing anyone, but I'm here to tell you that there are two worldviews. There's the Christian worldview, and then there's all the others. And I like to call all the others the dark side, because we are the children of the light, and the darkness doesn't like the light. And that's just the reality of it. And I'm here to tell you all, we're in a war. We're in a war for the hearts and the souls and the minds of our children and our country. And you all are awake. Sadly, many are still asleep. But God will give you one thing to do, the power of one. When you look at what's going on, and you begin to realize the assault that is on the freedoms of this nation, it can become overwhelming. And you want to just pull your head over, pull the covers over your head and just say, I can't fix all of this. And you're right. You cannot fix all of this. But God will give you one thing. He will give you one thing to do. And when you find that one thing, you do it with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, as if your very life and your very freedom depends on it. Because, brothers and sisters, it does. And I do believe we're at a tipping point. We are at a tipping point, or a turning point, depending on how you look at it. And this next election, not just the primary, but November, may be the last free election in America. I hate to say that, but it very well could be. We have lost so many of our freedoms, and if you ever do a little study of the Constitution, if you ever do the 5,000-year leap, if you ever start looking at some of these principles, when you realize how far adrift we have gone from where we originally started, you will go, oh my gosh, you will be stunned. You will be absolutely stunned. And in my opinion, if Obama wins again in November, the result would be like the Titanic backing up and ramming the iceberg again. I can't put it any plainer or simpler than that. If you want to look at the numbers of people that are not voting, I heard just the other day, St. Louis County Election Authority anticipates for this August primary a voter turnout of between 15 and 20%. Correct? Yeah, 15 to 20%. This is not unusual. I love the numbers, but if you look at it very simply, just imagine a pie, just a pie. You slice it up, 10 slices. 15 to 20%, that's 2 slices of that pie are determining what your community will look like, who your candidates will be, who will be in office, who will be making decisions for you and your family. When you live in where a simple majority, if all it requires is a simple majority, if you're talking 15%, that's 7.5%. This one will win that election or lose that election. So that's basically 1 slice of that 10-slice pie is determining what your community will look like. That's the reality. That is the reality we're in. Will we wake up? I don't know. Another good book to read if you want to know about after the ball, read The Marketing of Evil. This is a long-term plan that has been in effect for many years, probably at least 2 decades. It's not by accident we're here. It's very deliberate. So read The Marketing of Evil. Another reason why Christians aren't in the game. Read Abandonment Theology.
Amen.
Amen. Abandonment Theology. Read it.
Fight for your pastor.
Fight for your pastor. Wake up your people in your churches. Abandonment theology. Sing a little louder. Sing a little louder. There's a brochure out. There's a story that's told about. I'll get to your question in a minute. Sing a little louder. When the Nazis were transporting the Jews in trains, and it wasn't just Jews, it was gypsies, other non-persons, whoever, people that, pastors that they didn't like that spoke against the government, pretty much anybody they wanted to get rid of. Loaded them on the trains, when the trains would go by the churches on Sunday mornings, and they'd hear the people screaming. The people in the church heard it. The people in the church knew what was happening. They'd just sing a little louder. Sing your praise song, sing your choir song. Just sing a little louder, and we won't hear it, and we can continue to ignore the reality of what's happening. Your term, stop the hemorrhaging. That's where we're at in this election cycle. We got to stop the hemorrhaging. I was a nurse for 25 years, and when an emergency would come in, the first thing you do, stop the hemorrhaging. Stop the hemorrhaging. Oh, doctor, she needs reconstructive facial surgery. Yeah, but if we don't stop the hemorrhaging, she will not live long enough to get to the facial reconstruction. Oh, the leg needs to be reconstructed. Yes, but if we don't stop the hemorrhaging, we will never get to the next step. We've got to stop the hemorrhaging. And I've heard I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I had a gentleman say, I have a moral objection to voting for Obama. Yay! Then he says, I have a moral objection to voting for Romney. Well, my advice to you is, we are not electing America's pastor. That's the first thing. We are only electing the CEO of the executive branch of our government. And he's really not that important. If you go back to the original founding, he's not that important. He is only one person in one branch of our government. Think about that. My next advice to you is vote for the non-communist. I can't say it any simpler than that. We do have a really important primary going on, and I don't know, has anybody heard about Amendment 2? Amendment 2, the Religious Freedom Amendment, and the Prayer Amendment. Yeah, that is very important. I don't know if it's in your packets. I have a thing here. If you want more information, if you want flyers to share with your church, to put in your church bulletins, to hand out to your folks, email me. My email address is on that little card, and I will send you a PFD document or a PDF document, and you can print those out and you can share them with everybody that you know. It's a Religious Prayer and Freedom Amendment, and if you think this isn't important, just this morning on the newsletter from ACLJ, they are attacking prayer in public meetings. This is part of the agenda. You go after these small little communities, small little county government seats that do not have the finances to fight a long legal battle, and they cave, and they will cave. So, hold on just a second, because I've only got 4 more minutes.
Where's the card that you're talking about?
She goes out. I will make sure everybody gets one. When I'm done, we'll pass them out if anybody wants to. Anybody wants to? You want to help me? Pass out. And give everybody 2. Pass one to a friend. I've also got some CWA brochures if anybody would like to join us with CWA. And the only thing I would like to add, registering online, I have seen some blogs and some newsletters going around that, oh, it's so easy, just register online. Technically in Missouri, we cannot register online. You can fill out the form and download it, but at some point, it needs to go to your local election authority or to the Secretary of State. In Missouri, I personally would recommend that you get them to your local election authority. Because quite frankly, I personally do not trust our current Secretary of State. Sorry, that's just my personal opinion. And I'm just going to close with this. Tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. Tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. And the power of one. If you think one person can't make a difference, you are wrong. This old man, right here. Ever get a chance? A good man in evil times.
A good man in evil times.
A good man in evil times. This is the story of Aristides de Sousa Mendes, Portuguese consul during World War II. He saved tens of thousands of refugees that were desperately trying to escape Europe and trying to escape the concentration camps. And he had the power to issue visas so these people could escape. They were fleeing Germany, they were fleeing Poland, they were just scattering. And the ones on the east, they escaped France, and then they got to Spain, and then they finally got to Portugal. And all that was left was that great big ocean. And this gentleman had the power to issue visas. And he issued visas as fast and as furiously as he could. And they knew what he was doing. His government knew what he was doing. And they issued a little thing called Circular 14, which prohibited the issuing of visas to non-persons, anyone that didn't have any papers, people that were Jewish, gypsies, political, whatever. So when he issued those visas, he was breaking his government's law. Now, I am not advocating civil disobedience, but one person can make a difference. One person. He stood almost alone against Nazi aggression, the British, the French, and Portuguese pusillanimous policy of appeasement. Don't you love that? You can spell that word. He was no respecter of persons. Have you ever read that scripture about God not being a respecter of persons? He issued visas to stateless refugees, to royalty, people of royal descent, average men and women. He saved the very least of these. Ordinary man in an extraordinary time. you with this. I was blessed to go to Washington, D.C. last year, and I was able to go to the Holocaust Museum. You ever been there? One of the exhibits, towards the end of the exhibit, you will find a wall. And on this wall are plaques of names of people that stood in the gap against evil. And I had the privilege of touching the plaque with this man's name on it. We are called to such a time as this. God will give you a vision, God will give you a mission. And when you get it, and believe me, you will get it. You do it and you work as if you and your children and your country depend on it, because, my friends, it shall. We are in a battle between good and evil, black and white. And that's the truth of every one. It's an eternity. The good news is, we win. And I thank you.
Could you take a few minutes just to ask some questions? Anybody have a question for Deborah?
I pushed the bell.
No, let's take some questions.
About what you said.
Question, yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
Deborah, do you know anything about the initiative in Springfield, Missouri? The city council next week is to take some sort of vote on the agenda.
The day agenda, yes.
Can you address that?
That I cannot, I know very little about it, but I do know that vote is going on. And again, this is, if you read the marketing of evil, just get that book and read that. This again is, I think it's the strategy. They go after small communities. It happened not too long ago, just last fall, I think, somewhere in St. Louis. But they deliberately target small communities that cannot defend themselves financially or legally, and that's why they cave. They just cave. You'll also see it. They'll be coming after churches for the gay marriage issue. And they will deliberately target very small community churches, and they'll go in, will you marry us? And the pastor says, no, I won't. Then they bring a litigation against them. This is kind of their tool. And it's a very effective, and it's very effective. It's very effective. So we live in a land of litigation.
Where do they get the money?
Well, you know, I'm not so sure that George is behind this one. But the guy that wrote The Market of Evil made a very good point. You know, most of these people don't have children. As much as I love my children, they are a real financial drain. They don't have families to raise, so not only financially, and they're very bright, they're very smart, a lot of attorneys, they make a lot of money. They don't have to spend a lot of money raising families that they don't have. And then they don't have children to have to carry to baseball games and swim lessons, and so they've got extra time. So not only are they financially solvent, they've got a lot of time on their hands, and they're very active, they're very persistent.
There was some other questions.
Yes.
I was just curious, do we have some kind of map or breakdown in terms of, I was thinking by district, of the adults that vote versus the adults that don't? It'd be nice to focus my efforts on, you know, the 80-20 rule where I get the most bang for my buck.
And specifically, you mean talking about in Missouri?
Yeah, I'm talking about St. Louis County.
Right, and so you're talking about finding a list of unregistered?
Yes.
Right, and then being able to compare that to, well, I mean, even if it's not even a list, you know, I just Googled and found that I'm in the Concord Township. Great. So, does the Concord Township, being on the South County of St. Louis, you know, we're a pretty middle-class, white, suburban kind of area. Do I get, if I canvass that area and if I approach a couple of churches and work out some sort of registration drive there, if I do that, am I gonna get a lot of bang for my buck, or did somebody do this 5 years ago, and I should focus on the gravelly district, or?
So my initial, we have a massive database back at our office, right, that we're connected to, and we have almost 200 million names in the database.
Okay,
We have a lot of unregistered in it,
okay,
a lot of them per state, obviously, that's how we get these numbers in Missouri. And we broke them down per county, maybe, and I can check it. I will let you know, though, anecdotally,
okay,
every single group, every single church we work with, churches and groups,
yeah,
at least 20% of people are not registered. We've
okay,
never found a group or an organization, large or small, doesn't have 20%. So for Missouri, you can't miss.
okay,
In other states where it's much larger numbers, because you're a smaller percentage-wise state,
okay,
so I would say I can check back in office, and I'm connected with Rita and Judy, I can see if I can get you the information. But you can't go into a place and not find conservative registered.
okay,
You can go to the St. Louis County Board of Elections website
yeah,
and look up voter results by township.
okay,
But you won't be able to know, what you won't be
It
able
won't tell you,
to, you won't be able to know who's the unregistered conservative that they.
right, but she,
right,
you can look up by township on the Board of Elections website. That should help you. John?
Yeah, Bill, I first saw this, you present this, I think maybe back in November, and I thought you had an iPad in which if you put in an address, it would locate us in our neighborhood and then show neighbors in our precinct or our nearby neighbors, neighborhood people that were not registered to vote so that we could target. I'm a county chairman, and I've got a team of precinct people in my county. I've been talking to them about champion the vote for 6 months and how we're going to be able to target their neighbors and go to them. I have not been able to make that work on the website yet. Is that coming, or is it even am I not doing something right?
So there's two things. Now, when you put in names, are you getting up any people in Missouri that are not registered?
Yeah, Missouri, some of them are, a few 20, 30 miles away that could be in the county. After I've worked on some names, and frankly, I've called 20 names and maybe got 1 or 2 people. But when and as I scroll through them, I start calling. I'm in Joplin, and I start getting people in Kansas City, St. Louis. But I've been specifically excited about this program to target conservatives in the neighborhoods where the people, they know their neighbors and they can walk over to their house or call them as a friend and say, I found you're not registered to vote.
Right, and so what we've done is, so that database, right, because it expands out, right, so like you're saying is, it'll give you a 20-mile radius, but there might have to be somebody 2 miles from you. As we have more data, we will add more data in to see if it gets closer, okay, so that's the approach going from, you look up, put a zip code in, whatever names are closest to you, we'll keep uploading as more data comes in. But because we weren't getting enough data into the system of people that were right next door, that's one of the reasons why we developed, after we saw you in November of 2011, why this April we developed the already registered tool. We said, okay, let's also go in from the other direction. Could you think of people and could you put people in churches, right? And so it's the other way around. And what we're now having some churches actually do is some churches will actually go and put their database in and see who in their membership are not registered, and then they will contact them, because we don't have every name of who's not conservative registered.
I understand. I've been involved in precinct work since the 80s, and I typically find that people won't sit down with their Christmas card list or their church bulletin and start checking on people. It's got to be so easy for Americans to do this kind of work, that to go in a program like you've got and to be told by the program, this neighbor down the street or this person in your church may not be registered, give them a call and follow through on it, rather than work through 20 or 30 names to find one. We're too far
So I will
gone.
see if we're adding more names, but again, At that level, we do have, you can look for anybody, and we do have Missouri names in, as
Right.
mentioned. What you're saying is, can we get a more higher concentration and a closer proximity to where the action?
Well, and you're working on a special deal for my county, in Jasper County, to put 3,000 unregistered conservatives for us to call. That's a customized thing that you're working on, but the average person just signing up as a champion,
Right.
looking for nearby people, that feature by precinct, I guess, is not there. The data would be there. If you put your precinct in to know who else in your precinct, it could be tracked, I suppose, but it's just not that sophisticated yet.
I had trouble in the beginning when I first started looking at it last November, but I can now go in St. Louis County, my zip code, and I get a list of 20 people, all within a radius of maybe 2 miles.
Part of it is because we continually as we're able to update more data, and so it's not comprehensive per every county, per every state, and so it's just adding more, and so sometimes it's
Yeah.
customized, sometimes it's
Well, even zip code would be great. Within my own zip code would be.
But what I'm saying is, whatever, sometimes it's farther away than close, and it's just a process to add more, to get more good names in proximity. Because remember, we have to identify them as conservatives.
Right.
We can put in a lot of names that are just not registered, but we're very targeted.
Somebody was
don't
asking
need
the
to do
question earlier, how do I find out who is not registered in my neighborhood? If you go to Champion the Vote, and next week if you go to Missouri Precinct Project, you can look that up, and it will give you the list of people in your neighborhood that are not registered. Very, very easy. Okay, I think we have to move along.